What is up? My name is Michael. In this video, we're going to be talking about emotions. We're going to be talking about how emotions get stored in our body and how we can actually process them and move through them and integrate them. So what we're going to go over is an overview of how emotional trauma affects us, how it gets stored in our body, how it causes, quote, limiting beliefs and self-sabotage and all those fun things. And then we're going to actually go into how can we move through this energy? How can we actually create a different outcome for ourselves, work with our emotions so we're not overwhelmed by them all the time, and create more of a sense of stability and freedom and liberation in our lives. And so if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. You could click the bells for notifications when I upload new videos every week. And for those of you, the brave ones who really want to dive deeper and clear some of this emotional trauma, I have a free shadow work guide which goes really hand in hand for this video, and you could download that in the description below. So let's get into it. So when it comes to releasing trapped emotions in the body, integrating our wounds, it really comes down to embodiment, to emotional embodiment, because when we're dealing with emotions, we're really dealing with the body. We're dealing with energy, because emotions is just energy in motion. We're dealing with energy in the body. We're dealing with the nervous system as well as the mind. And so embodiment, just in essence, is a way to actually express these emotions with your body so that it can be processed and metabolized and digested. You know, just like we would digest our food, we need to digest our emotional wounds and triggers from the past. And this creates that sense of freedom, of aliveness, of openness. And the reason why I personally choose to use embodiment is because, guys, I tried just meditating. I tried just changing my behaviors. I tried, switching friend groups, all the things that we try to do to change our lives. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was working on just a mental level. I was working with just my intellect, really, just my cognition. And I wasn't going into the deeper, scarier places within my own body, this fear, this anger, this pain that was actually trapped in my body from the past. And so I'm going to walk you through the process of how we can start to actually open our bodies so the wounds can come to the surface and breathe and heal. And so we could look at the body as the unconscious. The body is the storehouse for all of our unconscious feelings, emotions, the things that we repress, and it is somatic. So when we're talking about emotional trauma, and trauma can be literally just getting yelled at when you're a child, having your reality invalidated, having your emotions questioned. Simple things like that are normalized can actually be emotional traumas. So trauma doesn't have to be something huge, trigger warning. It doesn't have to be something huge like getting raped or physically abused, or of course trauma is those things, but it's also little t trauma we all experience. No one leaves childhood unscathed. And so emotional trauma gets stored in our unconscious. And now we have our unconscious mind, of course, but our body is also the storehouse for the unconscious. So what happens is when you have an intense emotional external event that happens as a child, your nervous system, your body, can't process that emotional energy because emotions happen in the body. Right, so this involves the nervous system. And as children, what happens is that event, we split that, after the event occurs, we split the memory off from our conscious mind because we can't handle it, and we repress it to some extent, and it gets stored, that charge, that electrical charge gets stored in the body. Okay, so the body actually stores the charge stores the emotional charge from the event. That emotional electricity is stuck in your body. And then from there, what happens is it creates and influences our behavioral and relational patterns. Okay, so the emotional trauma that gets stored in our body affects the way we show up in our life. We're gonna be seeking things to cope. We might seek substances. We might seek sex. We might seek a relationship. We might seek numbing ourselves with food. We might seek over intellectualizing and just reading and studying and overworking, whatever your thing is, right? So it actually comes up, and the way it surfaces is through our behavior, and we see these dynamics play out in our relationships. So these same traumas get carried over into how we show up into the present moment. So it happened in the past, but it's maintained. That level of consciousness, that energy, that emotion, that behavior is maintained in the present. So we go through this process not to live in the past, but to honor the past and integrate it so that we can change the present. From there, what we do in our external world, right, the behaviors, how we show up, how we relate to ourselves and to others, that is within our conscious awareness. So up here, guys, the top of our pyramid here, this is the conscious mind. Okay, this is the conscious mind. This is your sense of I. I'm just fucking circling everything. This is your sense of I, your conscious mind, and limiting beliefs. So here's the thing, right? We're now at the conscious level, and we have these beliefs. I'm not good enough. I judge this person. Maybe you have social anxiety. Maybe you have self-doubt. Whatever beliefs are coming up in your mind, we would call them limiting beliefs. No one fucking chooses a limiting belief. No one like wakes up and is like, I want to really feel like I'm not good enough today. I want to really feel depressed and disconnected from life. Like, no one chooses that. What I'm trying to portray here is the power and the difference and distinction between the unconscious and your somatic body, your emotional body, and the conscious awareness, what we're aware of in our minds. Because a lot of people just try and approach like emotional healing through changing their thoughts or thinking positively. It's a great practice, but why it doesn't work on a deeper level is because these beliefs, these limiting thoughts and narratives that we have are actually being perpetuated. Woo! They're being perpetuated by the trauma that's stored in your body, right? So no matter how many times you change your thoughts, if you don't address this, you're just going to continue to trigger new thoughts. And that's going to trigger the wounding. And that's going to trigger another thought. And then the thought's going to trigger the same wound again. And so you see, it's just this pattern. This is why people feel stuck. This is where self-sabotage comes from. And this is, why so many people, who I work with, for example, are like, Mike, I tried everything. I've done the meditation, I've done the this, I've done the that. And until we take it to this level, in my experience, I didn't see huge shifts in my state of being until I took it to the body. And so essentially in this video, the process we're using to get through this is embodiment. What I mean by embodiment is consciously de-armoring the nervous system and allowing these emotions to surface, these feelings, these sensations in our body to arise, and to witness them and to stay with them, to breathe into them, and even to express them, to learn to express our rage, to cry, to express our sadness, to throw a temper tantrum, all of the things, so that this energy can move and it can discharge instead of being stuck inside of us. So there's a specific way to do this. There's a very specific way to do this, because when you have a traumatic event, right? When you have a traumatic event in your life, we're talking about emotional trauma mainly, it creates the stored emotional charge in your body, which we just talked about, which then creates physical armoring, okay? And physical armoring is, and you could study the field of bioenergetics, it's a field of therapy. Physical armoring is when you have repressed trauma in your body and your physical, it's stored in your muscle fascia. And so your muscles actually take on a certain shape. So, for me, I took on this shape of kind of like this, kind of closing to protect myself. And this is unconscious. You're not going to be aware of it because you've lived in it your whole life. Just like a fish in water isn't aware that they're actually in water, same thing applies here. And so we have years of armoring and literally physical musculature holding to protect us from feeling those things. And so this is what drives this stuck electrical charge, so to speak, emotional charge, is what drives the negative thoughts, the destructive patterns, the feelings of emotional overwhelm, etc., which we just went over, right? And this leads to a repression. It leads to a repression of the full expression of who you are. If you're not able to access these parts of yourself and express your emotions in this way, what happens is when we store these memories, we actually repress certain parts of ourselves too. So for me, I repressed my anger and I lost that part of myself that had an edge, that could confront people, that could stand up for myself and set boundaries. So I didn't have access to this part of myself and I was just a people pleaser. So we can also repress our joy and our creativity. And so this is how we can start to come more online in our fullness and experience the truth of who we are in our fullest expression. Okay, and so this creates a sense of separation and it creates the shadow self, which I'm going to go into. So there's a specific way to go about de-armoring, because you can't just rip it off. You're going to re-traumatize yourself. You're unconscious, your body won't let you. You can't force, just like you can't force someone to love you, you can't force a child to open to you. It's the same thing. View your emotional body as a young child. You can't force them to open to you. They're gonna be agitated, right? We have to gently and lovingly encourage them to open and express. Same thing with your own emotional body and your nervous system. So how we do this, how we actually start this process is, one, we create a felt sense of safety. Being able to create a felt sense of safety is your baseline. It's your window of tolerance. It's the space, the container. Feeling safe creates a container that allows for your depth to come through, allows for your deeper vulnerability to come through, because those parts of yourself that are repressed, that are in the shadow, are scared. They're actually scared. So we need that felt sense of safety to feel comfortable going there with ourselves. From there, we develop body awareness. We develop the ability to actually sense and feel different parts of our bodies, because again, this armoring, we end up dissociating and not feeling certain parts of our body without knowing it. And so being able to actually feel your body and sense it is a huge part of being able to actually integrate the emotion that's repressed. Step 3 here is thawing out the nervous system. So thawing out the nervous system, here's where we actually get into processes, right? What I mean by thawing out the nervous system is, quite often, people will come to me, and this is my experience, right? When I was in this space of deep emotional pain and having just so much trauma in my body and not knowing how to deal with it, I would feel these emotions. I would feel this deep anger in me, this deep sadness, this deep pain, this deep grief. But it was almost like under so many layers. It was so deep down, I felt like I couldn't access it to express it and allow it to move through me, but I wanted to. And the reason is because our nervous system actually kind of freezes up, right? The armoring, it freezes up. So we have to learn to let ourselves thaw out, so to speak, and let the emotional waters of our being flow. And we do that through processes like deep breath work, holotropic breath work. I have so many videos on my channel and on my pages where you could jump into stuff like that. Shaking, trauma release exercises. Literally, a great practice is going in your room and throwing a tantrum. So literally just allowing yourself to scream and rage and hit the bed and kick and flop around and cry and play music, and just start, even if you have to fake it at first, start to just get in the flow of expressing these emotions as they come up. And so I would even do it, in that order. And so those processes I just described are really step 4, which is the embodiment. The embodiment, the expression of the emotion, which allows it to integrate. And the key here is you want to take small bites. You don't want to go and try and feel your emotions for fucking 3 hours. It's not, the nervous system doesn't work like that. You wouldn't give a prime rib steak to an infant. They wouldn't be able to digest it. Same thing here. When you have emotional trauma, your nervous system actually stops developing to some extent in childhood. And so we have the nervous system of a 9-year-old walking around in a 30-year-old body, right? And so we're trying to go in and meet our nervous system where we're at. So you want to go in small bites and just feel this stuff for a few minutes. Just do a practice, express, scream, cry, whatever it is, for a few minutes. Do the breath work for a few minutes. And we slowly, just in bite-sized chunks, start to process this stuff. What's on the other side of this, when you can begin to do this, is you're gonna feel you're gonna feel so much, you're gonna have a connection to your authenticity, to your authentic expression, because being emotionally vulnerable is being connected to the truth of your direct, immediate experience, which is being authentic. So being able to be in touch with your emotions and your heart is being in touch with your authenticity. And having that space, opening up and clearing that space in your energetic, emotional body allows more room for creativity to come through. So your energy isn't all being used up to repress and bypass and not feel. And once you go through that stuff, you have all this energy freed up. You're not in survival anymore, and you can actually move into creation. And you'll feel more inspiration and downloads and coming through, and it's really beautiful. This also creates a sense of aliveness and connection, because when we can honor and feel the life within us, you'll feel much more connected to the life around you and the people around you. And you're also not going to be projecting all of your stuff onto them, so you're going to feel your heart will be more open, you'll be more connected. Okay, because when we're in a state of trauma, trauma actually creates separation. And the reason why today we're not living in a world where we're all in this like God consciousness, this unity consciousness of having a felt sense of the fact that we are all connected and all connected to a greater intelligence, God, source, whatever you want to call it, universe, nature. We're all connected to an intelligence. The reason we don't feel it is from trauma. And so when we can work through this trauma, when a traumatic event happens, you close, you contract, you cut yourself off from. So you feel alienated. You say, I'm in here and everything else is out here. It creates a separation. When we move through this stuff, it creates unity. It creates a felt sense of unity, and you actually feel in your body that connection. You'll feel connected to yourself, to your source, to your creator, to life, to other people. Okay, and this is where our full expression, where we can express our joy, express our playfulness, express all the different parts of ourselves, that comes online once we move through those emotional blocks. It's a byproduct of it. And as you do this over time, as you start to move through these shadows in an embodied way, you will open up to deeper layers of your heart. You'll open up to deeper feelings of love, deeper feelings of joy, deeper feelings of openness, because you have met yourself. And when you meet yourself, you meet God. You meet the divine source within you. And if you're seeking deeper support with this, you could check out my coaching. I have one-on-one coaching, I have different group programs, and also the free workbook is below. We could dive deeper. If this landed for you, drop a comment, let me know what you thought, share it with a friend, be sure to subscribe and like, and thank you for being with me so much, and I'll catch you in the next video.